You want to say something? I tried. I'm Bilbo. We're outdoors. Oh, and this is Riley, digging at some log right now. And today we're going to be exploring the aromatic side of pine resin. But before we do that, I'd like to clear some things up. Pine sap, pine resin, and pine pitch are often used interchangeably, but they do have their differences. Liquid pine sap is the blood or lifeline of the tree and holds the highest medicinal properties. It's always flowing throughout a tree in varying degrees. Pine resin is what we're after today. And to remove any confusion, it's essentially just the hardened version of pine sap clumped up on the bark of trees. And it's basically got the same properties as pine sap, just in a solidified state. What you see here is clumped up material that looks like pine sap, but when found around injury sites in large amounts, it's often called pitch. Pine pitch, which differs from pine sap, can still be medicinal like pine sap, but it's not a one-to-one comparison. Because pitch is usually emitted to fight off an injury, you can get bad pitch that's being used to fight off an infection, so it won't be as pure. Because of this, not all pine goo is created equal, and there are certain examples you'll want to pass on. If you find bright yellow or green sap that smells a bit cheesy, it's probably best to pass. Whereas the clear or even amber colored sap that smells like you'd expect fresh pine needles to smell is what to keep an eye and nose out for. I'm in Michigan, home of the eastern white pine. In fact, it's our state tree, and just a few hundred years ago, you could actually find these stoic giants in our woods the size of California redwoods. While these towering gentle giants have long since been reduced to the dirt from which they once emerged as tender saplings, what still remains is their offspring and the same blood that once coursed through their mighty veins. That is pine sap. But not just any pine sap. We're talking eastern white pine sap. Just to be clear, any evergreen sap should do. I've collected sap from red pines, blue spruce, Douglas firs, and more. However, when it comes to consuming pine needles internally, say you want to make a tea or even apply it topically, do your research first. The 5 finger rule, that is looking for 5 clumped up needles at the end of these branches, is a good one to keep in mind. Among all evergreens, I found the most medicinal studies and historical references to the eastern white pine tree. As you can see, they're extremely abundant in my area, and just from my experience, they have clear and exceptional smelling sap. Now, I recommend you collect this stuff in a glass jar or a clay vessel like the one my sister handmade me here. Shout out Kirsten. Pretty cool. You can also, if you need to, on site, find some bark or leaves around the area, and that should hold up fine. The biggest thing to consider is if you're putting this stuff in a bag, you want to make sure all areas of the sap or resin are covered so it doesn't get sticky and kind of get all over your bag as you're bringing it home. In fact, my very first time collecting pine resin, I was actually on a hike like right now with my dog, and so I didn't have anything on me. Luckily, I'd walked up on a tree and I saw a bunch of pine sap. Didn't even know really what I was looking at, but I was like, that's a lot of pine sap. I should probably take this home. So luckily there was a birch tree right next to it, and I just grabbed some excess bark, wrapped it up, and honestly, it's probably one of the best vessels I've used to date. So I may honestly go back to basics and use the birch bark again. Just thinking a little deeper about that, I think the reason the birch bark works so well is because birch bark is naturally oily. So that oil helps the pine sap not to really stick to the bark as much, and it's easy to remove once you get home. I should have brought the camera up there. Just got down from climbing the tree, and it's at the top there. If you ever see Jurassic Park, it looks like that mosquito that was frozen in the pine sap, pine resin. You're gonna find a walking stick and attach this to it ASAP. Alright, I don't have my microphone, so hopefully you can still hear me. But we're at the base of a massive eastern white pine, and yeah, you can probably already see it. This is actually a little late. It's probably been on here for about 2 months. I imagine this happened from one of the first snowstorms we got this year, or just a woodpecker. But typically you want the real clear stuff that's maybe even harder than this, so this will do. But the fact that this is an eastern white pine, I'm gonna take this because I know the sap is such high quality and smells So I'm gonna harvest this, I'll check back once that's done, and then we'll walk around here and try to find some more clear sap that's a little better and more fresh than this. I forgot to mention, I like to use a scraper thing here. You can just carve up a stick. This is just bamboo. But yeah, so typically just take the excess. You can see this is the injured part, exposed part. Just come back over. This stuff's old enough where I can work it with my fingers here and not get all sticky. Of course, gonna get sticky now that I sent it. It's sealed up again. Won't get affected. Win-win. This example's more like it. Not perfect, but that's pretty close to what you want. Let me get you a closer look. So this is a little discolored, but you can see here just how hard that is. Some bark, of course, trapped in there, but so this is pine pitch because it's wrapped up around this injury site here. But we can still use that. That's fresher than what we just collected, so you know, this is really what you're after, like this. That's clear sap. That's a perfect example. This is what we're after. Beautiful. Alright, so this is what we got. Leave the rest for the tree. I'll see you back at home. So we're back with our sap we collected today. Got the hiccups, so this should be fun. I found probably 3 or 4 more pine trees with reasonably, you can see it's pretty white pine sap. Alright, so hopefully the hiccups are over and I can get into the effects, the aromatherapeutic effects of this pine sap or pine resin that I've collected here. Look at this stuff. So for me, I've noticed that it's just incredibly calming and it kind of compels me, forces me to slow down, at least mentally. And personally, I think it reminds me just of the woods, maybe of my childhood. I'm not sure what the effects it'll have on you are, but it is known, there have been studies that it does calm you. It's a natural anxiety relief. It's not as overpowering as turpentine, but it does have a powerful grounding effect no matter where you're at mentally. Just burning this stuff in your room, car, no matter where you're at, is going to have a seriously calming effect. So if you haven't experienced it, I highly recommend it. So this is a great example of what we're after. Now there's a few methods for utilizing the aromatic effects of pine sap. The most complicated would probably be to extract it as an essential oil and use it in, say, like a diffuser. We ain't got time for that, so today I'm going to show you what I do instead. Now there's 2 ways that I'm familiar with, just depending if you want to look like a crackhead or not. Number 1, the most accessible but socially frowned upon way is using a spoon. If you've ever put the crack in pipe, this should require no explanation. Just be careful as the handle does get toasty and the spoon will stay scorching hot for way longer than you'd expect. I recommend doing this method in a closet like I am or locked in a bathroom. Just remember to wrap some cloths or napkins like I am around this handle so you don't burn yourself, and set it down over a non-flammable object once you're finished. Number 2, my favorite way, which is to use a soapstone. It's literally that simple. You can also burn some over a bundle of sage, like here, or Palo Santo if you'd like, but just remember it may get messy. So you can see the pine sap is starting to heat up here. Slowly dripping. So it's been about 30 seconds. It does not take very long. Slowly starting to rise here. And that's it. Hopefully you learned something new. Bilbo